Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff I'll Never Told You, production of iHeartRadio. And today, we are talking about something that I am very late to the game to. Given the job that we do, I'm sometimes embarrassed to admit what I use to listen to things and what I don't use to listen to things. But because I had recently decided I wanted to make a playlist of music for my very successful fan fiction, thank you, I was looking into Spotify, where a lot of people make these fan fiction playlists, and I wanted to be able to separate it out from my personal identity so that people can't track me this way. They can be like, oh, this is this person who wrote this fan fiction if I associate this playlist with this fan fiction. And I just went down this whole rabbit hole of how that's kind of impossible to do. Especially because all of my email addresses, except for one, are pretty clear who I am. Like, it would be pretty easy to find who I am through that. Also, speaking of fanfiction, there is a story I read where this is a whole thing, exchanging Spotify playlists and tracking people in Spotify playlists.
Okay, at the beginning, before we started this, you were like, I think you're going to know more about this. I have no idea what you're talking about. This is brand new to me.
Oh, I can't wait then.
Yeah.
You'll have to because I feel like you have more experience in a certain arena of this. So, okay, this is great.
Okay.
So this also kickstarted because I recently went to the beach with a couple of my friends, and one of them sent a collaborative playlist on Spotify, and you basically just add songs to it. And I don't really use Spotify, and I didn't add any songs, so from that, and then from this fan fiction experience, I learned about something called Spotify Stalking. Which is, yes, I'm really behind on. I knew it when I read about it. I was like, oh yeah, I guess I've heard about that. But I didn't know it was like a whole thing that people do. It's pretty much what it sounds like. It's checking out what people are listening to, their playlist. From what I read, it seems mostly harmless. People use it both to learn more about a crush or like post-breakup to check in on what their ex may be doing or feeling. It was really funny to read some quotes about this where people be like, oh, I can tell he's thinking of me because this song and this playlist title.
Wow.
Yes.
The new term delulu seems to fit into this entirely.
Oh, explain to me what that is.
Delusional.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay. Wow, I'm learning a lot today. So on Spotify, there's no way for people to see who has viewed your profile or who has listened to your playlist as of yet, or even who has liked or saved a playlist. You can really learn a lot about somebody based on what they're listening to. And we're going to talk about that more later and how Spotify has used that and when they're listening to it. Especially if you know them and their taste, there's a lot to glean there. Like I used to joke, if I'm listening to this one song, I'm not in a good place. Like there are things you can learn from people based on their music taste and when they're listening to music. I also learned apparently people have sex playlists.
Yes, that I know.
I did not know that. And that people have opinions about what it says about you based on certain songs. Apparently, some people tailor their list to attract people. And there are cryptic playlist titles. Like, they try to lure people in with the titles, all of this stuff. I spent way too long on my potential fan fiction title playlist. And people are way more knowledgeable and invested in these things than I am. They have knowledge about if you're gonna stalk them on LinkedIn, you do this. Apparently, Venmo stalking is a big thing, which I want to come back and talk about
You know, that is one thing that I find fascinating, that people actually have people that I'm like, why is this public for y'all? Why are y'all
Yeah.
sharing this? Like, do you not know it's public?
Yes, I feel that way too. When I see stuff on Venmo, I'm like, do you not know or do you not care?
Like, I can stalk. I will say, I have figured out when people have been in relationships with whom.
Uh-huh.
A friend of mine, I actually told her, I was like, I'm pretty sure they're dating this person because of what I found on Venmo. And I was correct.
Yes. Yes. I want to come back to this one because a lot of people said, yeah, we can kind of figure out what's going on in their life based on Venmo.
I'm sad to know that I'm not the smartest person in the world and figured that on my own. So there are others who have figured it out too, but okay.
Yeah, I'm not trying to take anything away from you.
It's okay.
You could be.
I'm a little sad.
But yeah, I also learned that apparently Goodreads gets in on this, and Pinterest as well.
Pinterest, yeah, that seems obvious.
It's fascinating because I was reading about the mindset behind this, and a lot of psychologists were like, it's generally harmless. Like generally, it makes sense post breakup. You're like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
As long as it's not an obsessive thing. If you're just kind of like, oh.
I mean, it's kind of like going through your Instagram and looking, who's this girl who liked this picture?
And as long as you don't like hate on this girl or
right,
kind of
sending
obsessed
them threatening
over it,
messages.
yeah, then that makes sense. Like you're kind of just curious, like, oh, who came after me? Like, what
or before?
Was it?
I do
or
that.
Before.
Makes me sad.
Yeah. Yeah. But generally it's viewed as kind of a natural thing that happens in our sort of social media landscape. And it can be very unhealthy. We're going to talk about that in just a second. And some have pointed out that this can be helpful in terms of making sure a person you're interested in is who they say they are. We've talked about that too. Like before you go on a date, you might be like, let me look them up. Are they on social media? Can I find anything out about them to make sure they're like a real person and also that they are hopefully safe to meet. So
that's actually single.
And is actually single. Yes, that is a good point. But as we talk about a lot on the show, when it comes to these platforms, they can be used as a tool for abuse, harassment, and stalking, especially towards women. And Spotify is not immune from that because a part of the issue here is that Spotify is more of a social media platform than many people realize. It is heavily connected to Facebook, which we know has a lot of issues around privacy, and therefore so does Spotify. In fact, you can connect and are encouraged to connect your Spotify to your Facebook and follow friends that way and you can see what they're playing. You can see their activity. It's actually really detailed. There are ways to do this even if the user didn't connect their account to Facebook. On top of this, until very recently, Spotify didn't have an option to block other users. So, in 2018, BuzzFeed News posted an article chronicling a woman's harrowing experience with Spotify stalking. So, she had left her emotionally abusive boyfriend. She did her best to completely cut him out of her life. But for over a year, he stalked her on social media. He created these fake profiles. He posted images of locations she just visited, harassed her friends and her family. She blocked him on every platform she could. But there was not a way to block him on Spotify. The woman told BuzzFeed News that he would, quote, follow what I was listening to and send me emails about it, convinced that what I was listening to was proof I wanted to be with him again. This was frightening. It revealed the depth of his desperation to monitor my activity, as well as his delusions about getting back together. And users had long been asking for a block feature since at least 2012. Following what people are listening to is not the only way to harass or stalk them either on this platform. Some reported exes making playlists and naming them something threatening towards them. Another user reported how after getting a restraining order against an abusive ex, he still harassed her on Spotify, following artists that they followed and then unfollowing them when they did. Another said, I was the victim of a violent crime, the perpetrator being someone I knew and whom I can now not remove from my Spotify. While this may not be an issue for you, it's a very big one for me. A change.org petition gathered over 7,000 signatures, and it read, I was harassed and stalked online by an acquaintance who was able to monitor me through my social media profiles. Even if you cut off contact, the ability for a harasser to continue following you is a form of intimidation in itself, as if they are saying, you can't stop me from watching you, even here. And many have pointed out the irony that Spotify took very public stances against artists who had been found to be sexually violent towards women, but were not willing to take these steps to protect their users. So Spotify does have a function called private session, but it has to be chosen from the app, and it times out after a while.
It does. That's weird. So it's like for a short time?
Yes. And you have to choose it. So, you might forget that it times out. And you can share private playlist, but a lot of people do want to share their music with friends and followers, just not harassers and abusers. So this, like with my fan fiction, I was like, I just want my fan fiction people to listen to it. But what if I don't want everyone else? There's no option for that currently.
Huh.
Yes. And also, it's just not fair to ask survivors to not use these platforms that are such a part of all of our lives.
Right.
The reality is that we exist on the internet. It's a big part of our social interactions. And it's very blame the victim to be like, well, too bad. Just go away. Get off of it.
Just ignore them.
Yeah. We deserve better than that. And so, in the face of all of this, in 2021, Spotify does have a block option. But I think it's important to think about all of the ways these companies are collecting our data and all the ways we can be harassed online. Because I believe a lot of people didn't know about this. Like, it's not the first thing you think about when you're thinking about ways people can harass you online. And I would love to come back and revisit like Goodreads and Venmo and LinkedIn. I believe Goodreads was one that also came up that was like, you can't block someone from Goodreads.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it really is. And you can learn a lot from people based on the music they listen to. And according to Wired, Spotify has about 365 million users and just collects a ton of data.
Right.
So this is important. So here's a quote from them. Everything you do in Spotify's web player and desktop and mobile apps is tracked. Every tap, song start, playlist, listen, search, shuffle, and pause is logged. Spotify knows that you started playing Lizzo's Truth Hurts at 23:03, listen to it for 1 minute, then search for Breakup, and listen to the entire 4 hours and 52 minutes of the Angry Breakup playlist without any pauses. And then you've got kind of a read on where that person is right now.
It's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay. But it is true. It's so true. And I just couldn't figure out. I was just going through all these hoops to figure out what people could see if they come visit my profile. And like, I don't know, ultimately, what's on there? Yeah, it's just sad music. It's okay. But like,
It's just K-pop.
Right. But it's still worth knowing, I think. Right. And there are a lot of tutorials about how to limit what Spotify tracks. And I suggest that you look them up. I suggest that you look that up for all apps and services, honestly.
But the reality is, it's too late.
It's true. But there is some stuff like you can minimize it at least a little.
There's a thing though.
Like your TV might be listening to you.
Yes. So there's this whole thing about Roku listening to you. And this is the problem though, where individual companies no longer have limits. And a long time ago, when policies were presented to Congress to limit that and to give rights to consumers, and that was literally blocked and or dismissed because they're like, nah, we love being able to get data and to keep tabs on people.
Yeah.
They're not willing to protect the consumers that way, but they don't want to restrict what we can and can't see or do. So there's this level of like when we talked about with Bridget, how little the government really cares about the individual and the rights. So when we see bills like the whole like protect the children stuff from grooming on the interwebs, we know that's a bunch of lies, and that's just about having power and the rights to control what we look at, not protecting us. So this is where I'm like, yeah, there's things that you can do, and I'm a little jaded that it's like every single app, social media company that we use, every single thing with TV, every single thing with like Alexa, with our current laptop, they've all updated their terms of agreement saying that we can't sue them for tracking us. Yes, you can opt out of some of it, but we can turn it back on whenever we want. Essentially is what every single thing has updated to, because Congress has taken out the limits for these corporations. So that's why I'm like, it's kind of too late. If you've talked on your phone, you're kind of done. If you have a smart TV, it's over. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, but you can still turn some stuff off.
You can turn stuff off for sure. At the very least, like stop doing some things to get harassed by individuals. Not necessarily from the companies, though.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, like this article, as we've talked about several times, like Spotify is not selling you music. They're selling companies your data. Like that's their business model. That's what most of them are doing.
Something about Instacart. They're not actually making money off of doing the services. It's actually being able to make money from the data. That's why they're able to give you as many deals as they get.
Right. Exactly. You're the product.
And that's the Black Mirror episode.
It's true. Here I am just trying to be a nerd and have a fan fiction playlist that can't be traced back to me.
Like after this, I just looked at my Spotify list. I was like, I have followers?
Yes.
Why? And then I realized a couple of those because we made Spenty playlists. So those followers, we love you.
Yes, we do. And that's the thing. I hate that I want to share it. Like it's not... I don't like this whole idea like you can either... So on Spotify, it's pretty much no one can see it or everyone can see it. And I wish there was a middle ground of that. But currently, as far as I know, there is not. But let me know if I'm wrong, if you have a workaround.
Maybe. There are some savvy people out there.
There are, but some of those savvy people freaked me out because they were like, here's how you find somebody on Spotify, even if they're private. And it was code. And I was like, oh, no.
Oh,
no. Again, there's nothing on my Spotify, but I just don't like the idea of it, okay?
But don't look at it.
Yeah, don't look at it unless I want you to, and then you can.
Maybe.
Well, I'm sure we'll be back because I have a lot more questions after doing this research. So many things. But in the meantime, if you have any thoughts about this, listeners, you can contact us. You can email us at stuffmediamomstuff@iheartmedia.com. You can find us on Twitter at momstuffpodcast or on Instagram and TikTok at Stuff Mom Never Told You. We have a TeePublic store and we have a book that you can get right now at stuffyoushouldreadbooks.com. Thanks as always to our super producer, Christina, our executive producer, Maya, and our contributor, Joey.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening. Stuff Mom Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.